The greatest magic trick you've never seen and the greatest magic show you've never seen. Okay, you might have seen them, but the reason I'm putting it that way is because I think these two deserve attention, and I myself am a magician and I needed other people to tell me about them and that they existed way after they existed. And I want other people to know about them too, so I'm going to overanalyze them for you. If this looks familiar to you, this is a compilation video of a couple analysis videos that I did, and I'm really interested in doing more on the channel, so let me know if you like analyses like this. The first one's a bit of a short one of a Fool Us performance, and it's a little more quippy in style. The second one is just a little bit more discussion based, so let me know the style you prefer as well if you're interested in these videos. But I've put them together as sort of a duology or mini series, and I'm interested in doing more, but I know people like engaging in content long form on YouTube, so this way you can just set your phone down, listen to this if you'd like, fall asleep to it, whatever you want to do. And let me know your thoughts on these two magicians in the comments below. But for now, let's dive into the discussion. So the year is 2019, and this guy, Asi Wind, comes on to the magic show Fool Us, a TV competition program in which the world's most talented magicians come to try and fool two juggernauts in the magic world, Penn and Teller. And what he did next shocked everyone. Now, why would I bet that you've never seen it? Well, I myself am a magician. I've been learning and performing magic for 20 years, and yet I only just found out about this performance this year. I guess this is just what happens these days. Even though we're more connected than ever on the internet, there's also so much happening, so much content, so much being shared that we can often miss out on something truly special. So I'm grateful for a couple magicians in my community sharing this with me. Thank you guys, you know who you are. But this trick was mind-blowing, and I'd just like to explain to you why, and hopefully expose you to this magician and his performance if you haven't seen him before. But also, I think this is where we have something to learn. Not just me and not just fellow magicians, but anyone who is a communicator in any field. If you give presentations, if you're a writer, a student, or even if you just have to lead a work meeting every now and then, it's works of art like this that distill some key principles of communication we should all know. So let's get into it.
I'm going to show you a trick and explain exactly how it's done. So Penn? Yes? I need you to choose a person we can trust.
First, Asi immediately tells us something perhaps a little surprising. He tells us he's going to explain the trick. Now, some magicians say they'll do this in their presentations, but then they don't actually satisfy that promise. They just kind of use it as a teaser. But we don't know yet where he's going to take this. Regardless, it creates intrigue. But before we can see the explanation, we have to see the trick. And all the while, we're interested now because we know we apparently will get to see how it's done. And the trick he does itself is very impressive. In fact, those words undersell it. As a magician, my gears were turning, trying to think of all the possible methods it could have used, but I was coming up empty, as the way in which Asi does this trick shows that none of my solutions could have been possible. So here's the sequence of events. Asi has Penn pick a truly random audience member, and as a complete aside, I love that we get to see Penn as Santa here. It was a holiday episode. Asi then guides the participant to think of a card in his head, narrowing down the options as he goes through them. There's some good banter here, acting like, oh, maybe a different choice. He takes this whole break to sip his water and give the guy time to change, but of course he doesn't, and he chooses the King of Spades. Okay. But then, as Asi gives him one last chance to change his mind, the guy does this time.
And you have different suit? What suit do you want?
King of clubs.
King of clubs! Twist in this dramatic. Okay, twist.
This makes the whole thing feel really fair. You know, not only did he let him stay when he wanted, but he let him change his mind when he wanted. All right. And a true showman, he has some great banter and commentary for that moment too. When Asi goes to a deck of cards that is inside a box, he goes to reveal that the card is turned over in the deck. And that's impressive, but if you're a magician, you're not too impressed yet. You'll know ways he might have done this. But he then goes to show that it's a different colored card, and then that it's the only printed card in a blank deck. And without saying too much, it's the way he is handling these cards that then will really floor you if you're a magician. And to really settle that fact, he immediately gives the cards to Penn and Teller.
I know you love to examine cards, so these are for you. Happy holidays. Enjoy. Enjoy yourselves.
Now, there's a few things that emphasize our first principle to take away here. One I haven't even mentioned yet. It's the blueprint in the background. You might think, what is that? Is it just generic? You know, the idea of intricacies? It's this like large background, so you can't go through a single shot of Asi without seeing it back there. It also re-emphasizes the promise. And it's that promise that is in the back of our minds the whole time. Not only is this an amazing trick, but maybe he was telling the truth when he said that we would get to see it explained. And last, it's the trick itself, the fooling nature of it, and the fact that it is, as far as I'm concerned, a magician fooler too. It was all over for me when he handed those cards to Penn and Teller. And what do all of these decisions create? They create one of the strongest feelings that all of the best magicians, storytellers, and communicators in general use: intrigue. Use intrigue in your communication in order to be effective. Set up a promise or set up something that needs to be fulfilled. This is embedded so far into our psychology that we even see it in the art of music. Musicians create melodies with notes that are off of the chord that don't feel satisfying. Then they come back onto the chord to create a feeling of resolution. This is in our psyche. We love intrigue as long as it gets satisfied. But intrigue gets the attention. So how can you use it? Well, you might want to do it the way Asi does, make a promise at the beginning of your presentation or meeting or book, whatever it may be. Make a promise that you're going to be able to deliver on. Or maybe you ask a question that many other people wonder about too. This is what a lot of successful YouTube videos do. They pose a specific question, and then over the course of the video, they seek to answer it.
I'll do you one better. Why is Gamora?
Start with intrigue. Now, how does this great trick get even better? Well, Asi then delivers on his promise. He gives us the explanation. And we come to realize this whole time that the backdrop represented a schematic of his secret. Incredible. A lot of the comments on the YouTube video are mind blown this fact, how it was just such a bold move for him to do. Asi shows us this impressive round table contraption that delivers him the deck he needs. That moment he was sipping his mug, that was part of the contraption too. Everyone likes being able to peek behind the curtain. Many magicians have begun to figure out entertaining ways that they can let the audience in a little bit on their secrets while still impressing them in the end. A classic example is the silk to egg trick. The performer seems to magically turn a silk into an egg, but then he proceeds to reveal it. He shows that he uses a hollow egg that he pushes the silk into and then reveals. In modern times, Penn and Teller themselves have often integrated explanations of secrets into their acts in order to entertain the audience and impress them even further when they do something that either defies these expectations or they're able to do the secrets so impressively that the entertainment comes from their skill as opposed to being fooled. Now, this is a controversial choice for many magicians. The question is always, what's okay to reveal and not to reveal? That's a legitimate concern, maybe for another day, another conversation. But regardless, if you find something that you can let people in on a little, it can have great impact. People actually like learning things, believe it or not. We like learning if it's interesting. So you can apply this to any craft, not just magic. If you're a presenter and you're able to make what you need to teach intriguing, like the first step said, you can then explain some of its intricacies, and people will be following right along with you because of the way you were able to hook them with step one. This is why these principles build. We've started with intrigue, something that prompts a question of how, or I want to know, and then we answer the question. Now, the great part of this is that Asi doesn't just deliver on the promise, but he also says something with it. He has something meaningful to attach to the entertainment and the presentation. And I believe that we all have something to say.
Why should I waste my time listening?
Because I have a right to be, and I have a voice!
Yes, you do.
He explains how he wanted to give people this experience, that kind of understanding of what it's like to lose the mystery, because that's the sacrifice that a magician makes. So the entertainment he's delivering is a vehicle on which his deeper message can be delivered. But how does he drive that message home? Well, that brings us to part 3.
I wanted you to feel for a brief moment what it's like to be on my side of magic. For a brief moment to enjoy the part that I find beautiful. But I did not want you to pay the price I paid. I made a choice. I chose to learn the secrets, and I can't make that choice for you. That's why I told you at the very beginning that everything on stage is a part of the illusion. Nothing is innocent. Nothing is as it seems.
Asi explains that he didn't want to take away the mystery from people when they hadn't made that choice for themselves. He just wanted to give them that feeling so that they would understand. They'd understand the sacrifice that a magician makes. Remember that silk to egg trick I mentioned? The end of the trick is that the performer actually cracks his egg and pours it into a glass, revealing that the explanation was itself just a trick too. Asi Wind has done the same idea on a grander scale and with a meaning, that there is a price to pay in order to pursue a craft like magic, but that those who pay that price can then deliver that exhilaration of mystery to others. This moment is the twist. It's surprise. As magician Joshua Jay found in his psychological studies on magic, surprise is really the core feature of a magic trick. We don't just like seeing something impossible. A trick really satisfies us when it surprises us. As Penn said at the end, not only could they not guess the method, they couldn't even predict where the plot was going. Once again, we see this all throughout art and storytelling mediums, the rule of 3 in comedy. You set up and escalate a pattern, and then you subvert the pattern. That subversion is the period. It's the exclamation point. It's the punctuation mark that lets you know this is finished, it's complete. And that refreshes you. It kind of lets you relax into the full story that you've just experienced. You might even say it releases you because it rounds out the whole thing. Now, surprises can elevate any moment in a presentation or show or magic trick, but a good ending surprise is what we would call the inevitable surprise, and we get this from story writing principles. It's one that reveals what's been there the whole time, how everything was intentional and fits together. So it might sound cheesy, but here's an example. What if you made your main points in a presentation form an acronym? That's pretty common, people do it all the time, but everybody tells you the acronym at the beginning. I get that because it's a mnemonic device, makes sense. But what if you didn't tell anyone that there was an acronym at all? You made your main points, and then at the end, you reveal the mnemonic, you reveal the acronym that it all forms together. Not only does it serve your audience because it makes the main points easier to remember, but it's a nice little surprise, right? They get to see everything come together, intrigue, explanation, and twist. It's the secret sauce to make anything you do as compelling as a good magic trick. And of course, once you've delivered what people came for, don't overstay your welcome with a long drawn-out ending. One of the greatest magic shows you will ever see is one in which the creators maybe even would argue it's not actually a magic show.
It's actually hard to describe what this show is.
And the reason I think this is one of the greatest magic specials of all time is not only due to the incredible tricks, the incredible narrative, the incredible performance, but also because instead of boosting the ego of the performer, I truly believe this show embodies compassion, vulnerability, extending empathy and value to your audience in a way that will inspire you to show yourself and others compassion too. Also, I will be spoiling things from this special, so if you don't want to have anything spoiled, you can stop the video now and go check it out yourself. So if you're new here, my name is Michael. I am a hobbyist magician, hence the name, And so I share tricks, I teach tricks on this channel, and I also just try to inspire people to enjoy their hobbies, in my case, magic. I also have bonus tricks on my exclusive membership merch, and you can book me for magic shows if you're interested, but that's not what we're talking about today. Today, I just want to break down what went right with this magic special. Now, a friend of mine a few years ago, friend and coworker, actually told me about this show after I got to do just like an in-house show for coworkers at a staff kind of team building retreat. And so now that I've seen it, I consider it a huge compliment that my show at least made him, think of correlating this show, because that was one thing I tried to do with mine. This kind of idea of vulnerability, or, saying something meaningful with the magic, which can be really cheesy and can be really difficult to do. At the time, I think I was channeling like a little bit of like what I'd seen from a Bo Burnham maybe, as well as a magician I had seen growing up who would come and talk at like youth camps. But I had actually never heard of it. And it's interesting when someone tells me about a magician that I haven't heard. It's not that I'm the most well-researched, but just the fact that I'd never heard of this magician and I never heard of this special stood out to me. So I hopped on Hulu, actually on, I think, the flight home from this trip, and I watched this magic special. You can still watch it on Hulu, and I highly recommend it. So there's your endorsement out of the way. I also just remembered I have a little Hulu thing you can use if you want. That's another affiliate link. It's again not why I'm sharing this. I've wanted to talk about this special for a long time, but I happen to have it through like Linktree gave it to me. So I guess I'll link you to my Linktree, which will link you to that if you want. I think it's like a 30 days free thing, and I'll like get a commission off of it somehow if you use it. So for what it's worth. But anyway, this is about the special, but this is more than just a review or just talking about it. This is a little bit of an analysis on how the tricks tie into this theme of compassion, empathy, and vulnerability, and what I think we can take away from that, whether you're a fellow magician like me, if you're an entertainer performer in a general sense, or if you have to communicate in any field you have. So I think any of us would benefit from analyzing this special and what it means. So let me just walk through a little bit of how it starts. So this ran for a limited time. I know that Frank Oz was involved in the creation of this as well, Yoda. Stephen Colbert was involved in the process of making this as well. So there's names like backing this. Neil Patrick Harris, executive produced. But when the audience members walk in, immediately this kind of deeper idea of what this show is going to be about is already starting to be communicated, because when you walk in, your ticket that you'll then end up handing to the person at the usher at the front, you have to actually select from a wall. And the wall is a wall of identity cards. And these range from anything from like direct, like I'm a firefighter. If I walked in and I was a firefighter, I saw that, I might take that card. But there are also deeper ones that were maybe more somber and introspective, or more championing of like, I'm a fighter, or, I have overcome something. There were different ones like that, but also ones that were maybe more vulnerable in the sense of like being down on yourself and admitting like, I feel bad about myself in this way. And then there were things in the middle too of like silly stuff, some comical ones, and everyone walks in and they're, taking these tags and they're giving them to the ushers at the front. The usher will like rip a little stub similar to the ticket stub entrance system that we would be used to. So people have their own card, and then there's like a stack of cards being formed from the stubs of these identity cards. So already I can imagine if I was one of those participants, if I was the audience coming in, I'd be like, I'm being asked to reflect on myself already. Before I see the magician, before I see the performer, before anything happens, I'm kind of already engaging in a little bit of this introspection. And it's not about Derek. It's not about him as the performer. It's about you as the audience member, which I found really fascinating. So Derek is doing some voiceover that then I think we cut to is like his kind of opening monologue. And this is the point at which I admit, I was like, is this going to be too downery? Is this going to be too self-serious and not earn it, right? Because that's the thing I always worry about, like any creative act I've engaged in where I really want to say something. I took writing classes in college. I was a communication major and a writing minor. I took semesters of poetry, fiction, and nonfiction writing. And in those classes, it was a lot about earning, right? Like, can you earn the earnest moment? And so for Derek to come right out and kind of be engaging in this story, this monologue, you're kind of wondering like, what are we getting ourselves into? Like, I admit, I was just kind of like, is this going to be mopey and just for the sake of being mopey and down, maybe style over substance? But no, it moves to, well, it creates a point. He tells the story of this person who is obsessed with winning Russian roulette. And every time he goes in and he's risking his life, he's coming out and winning. But it seems to be not about the money that he's winning in these high stakes Russian roulette games. It's about this obsession he has. Like maybe he doesn't want to live, or maybe he is more interested in the game, right? And so it's this kind of fascinating thing. And then it reveals behind him this back wall of 6 chambers representing 6 different movements he'll kind of move through, but it also is kind of a metaphor for the rounds of the chamber. And I think we also get like a click sound effect as though the revolver is rotating. And so we kind of get this clear picture that this is a crafted show. I mean, obviously it should be, but there's a lot of intent. And he takes a long time to do the magic. Now, I said at the top, if you watch interviews of Derek, and I believe it's either Colbert or Frank Oz talking about this, there is kind of this wrestling with whether they should call it a magic show. And I totally understand and validate their desire to maybe say it isn't a magic show, but that it is it's a performance piece. You know, they're kind of maybe trying to represent it as higher art and say that it contains magic. And I think that's okay also from the standpoint of communicating expectations.
What is the hesitance you have with the label of magician?
It's about, I guess, legibility for the work. And that word, magic or magician, it really is potent. And a lot of imagery comes into one's head when, I don't know what it is, but even the best, yeah, that's yes, there's that. But even the best version of it still prevents people from actually seeing or hearing what I'm trying to put in front of them.
So in the world of performance art, entertainment, as well as, you know, fiction and poetry, all those things, whatever you classify something's genre as, the reason you do so is to create expectation. And so if I tell you something is a song, but it has no music, and I actually just read to you a poem, you know, I might be trying to challenge the barrier walls between genre, but you might be disappointed because I didn't deliver what you were expecting. Similarly, if I told you that you were going to go see a heist movie, and there's not really a heist movie on display, maybe there's like a heist in the first act and then the rest of the movie is a romance, you would probably be disappointed or even feel cheated. So with any of these things, when it comes to art mediums, we're really just trying to communicate expectations. So it makes sense that Derek, knowing that there's magic all throughout his show, but he kind of feels like his show is something more than a magic special, I totally understand and validate that. My mindset is like, man, can we elevate the expectation of a magic show? Because to me, there was still plenty of magic in the show. So that's just kind of my thoughts on it. And you'll see, like, it takes a few minutes to get to that first magic moment. That might be weird to see in what you would expect from a conventional magic show. Whenever I've had, you know, some opportunities to perform, whether it's casually or a little bit more structured, I've learned over the years to really earn attention. And the way I earn attention is by delivering a few really good magic moments right off the bat. And I try to also establish my credibility, you know, to show that I know what I'm doing when it comes to sleight of hand, and also just to my ability to entertain you using a deck of cards or whatever the prop is that I'm using. So all that to say, that's a little bit of a challenging start when it comes to magic shows, but I see where he's coming from. And that first trick, even in itself, is subtle, and it just kind of introduces a little bit of whimsy and wonder, and it begins this kind of process where Derek uses magic tricks to infuse joy, wonder, hope, understanding, vulnerability into the hard things of life. And so he injects some sort of meaning or metaphor out of it. And so the first trick is this kind of interesting way that a paper boat goes into a bottle. So it's like a ship in a bottle, and then it's floating inside the bottle. He kind of makes an origami boat, puts it in the bottle. It's a really beautiful but subtle visual moment of magic, and it introduces how magic provides that whimsy and hope in a feeling of darkness. And so at least that's kind of how I look at his use of it. So this is Derek's structure, his modus operandi, his methodology as far as I can tell. He is telling stories whether it's his own or metaphors, to cultivate his own and others' sense of vulnerability, compassion, empathy. So he will self-reflect, or he'll reflect on a story, or he will give others the chance to tell their own stories. And so that's the other thing that I think is huge about this show. He's not only going to tell his own story, he's not only going to try to get your empathy, he's going to try to give the audience members plenty of moments, not just to shine as fellow performers, which is something that magic shows do, but actually to give them a chance to really be vulnerable. And he works really hard to protect a space where that vulnerability can be cultivated and dignified. Because if you think about a magic show, that's actually one of the most awkward feeling things. As much as I love performing magic and I need audience participation and I need those people who are excited and confident and want to go help the magician on stage, if I go to a performance, I'm really not in the mood to do that. And so for him to go beyond that and cultivate people actually sharing their own stories and being vulnerable in that way is huge. And we see that as the show goes on. So Derek's self-admitted fascination is deception. So his obsession, kind of like the roulettista, winning those games, is he has what would become a risky obsession, which is deception. And in his life, and I believe this is all true, this is kind of the biographical aspect, Derek shares about how in his life he went from doing tricks to actually helping cheat in backroom poker games, or, you know, like private poker games, I guess I should say. But these were larger ordeals, things where there's this whole private party and people come to this, however consistently, however often it's happening. And we learn more about this actually in his memoir biography book called A Moral Man. And first of all, just look at this cover and also the title. You can see that there's no spaces in A Moral Man. So are we speaking about a space moral space man, or are we talking about an amoral man, as in without morals? So once again, just his playfulness with that I think is really cool. And we have the kind of what people like to call inception nowadays, where something is within something is within something, just kind of as a neat optical aspect of the cover. But this, I think, is a perfect companion piece to the show because he will sprinkle in bits of his story about the gambling and the cheating, as well as his family growing up. But you get a lot more about all of that in here. And you even find out some things that he said in the show. I'm thinking of one thing in particular that the meaning of it sort of changes if you read this book. And so I think that's a great companion piece. I wasn't sure if I'd be mentioning this in this video, but now that I do actually have an affiliate link for this. So I would recommend it either way, but just because I have it, yeah, there you go, influencer thing. But all that to say, this is where he starts to use more stories that we know in the zeitgeist to kind of influence his own story. So things that you'd be familiar with, like the elephant, where a bunch of blind people are touching the elephant and they can't formulate like, oh, it's a tree trunk, it's a snake. He kind of plays upon that idea, and he plays upon the idea of the allegory of the cave. You know, when you think about the allegory of the cave, you think about, am I being deceived? Is this world not the way that I think it is? That's where we get like the Matrix, the kind of brain in the vat theory, like Descartes, all of that stuff. He speaks to that and he says, yeah, that's all fine and good. But what about the people making the shadow puppets? And this kind of idea that he has become a person through his craft with sleight of hand and with being able to cheat at cards, that he is a shadow puppeteer, and that has created a fascinating but dangerous life for him because of the risks involved in helping someone cheat. So he shares a little bit more of his story, and now we go back into him inviting more people to share their story. So I mentioned that would be an aspect. Here's the first big glimpse we get of it. He looks out at the audience and he says that he's going to need someone to actually leave for the second half of the show. And there was someone who did that at the previous show, and this has just been a chain of events going on. And he explains, like, there's a book, and I want you to write what happens in the second half of the show. I think he specifically asks them what happens with the elephant, and I've kind of already revealed what he'll end up commenting on with the elephant, but it's this great moment because that person will leave with the book and try to conceptualize what the rest of the show is, but then the person before them actually gets to read out loud what they conceptualize the rest of the book to be. And then in the special, we get to see other pages of the book, and we get these really interesting infusions of what Derek's show meant for him and what he was trying to explore about life, infused with what these people are going through in their life and what they think it means, but also they kind of become fellow creators in that way in which they are trying to describe what they think this show is. And so that's that first kind of moment.
And it's that responsibility that book presents to people, is the responsibility. We are all writing one another's stories.
And that's a great crossover into more vulnerability from the audience, because it's not like, hey, spew your guts about your life right away. It is, hey, become a co-creator of this space with me. And I think that's a really fascinating thing. The other thing, just at like a base magic theory level, is the element of surprise and intrigue. I'm convinced, based on like the works of Joshua Jay and the psychological studies he's actually done on the effects of magic psychologically on audience members, I think the central ingredient to magic is surprise. That is why I don't do the same tricks twice. You know, if I'm going to be showing the trick again to anyone, I'm going to have to mix it up in some way. It is very rare. You can do it sometimes, but it's very rare for me to allow you to see the same magic moment twice unless I have planned to do so. And if I have planned to do so, I'm usually escalating and twisting it in some way. Why is that? Why do we do that? The element of surprise is so critical to magic. And to me, that's actually dignifying to the observer. You know, like, you're actually smarter than you might think a magician thinks you are. And so we have to keep up with that intelligence in order to protect the wonder and that feeling of impossibility that comes up from a trick. But surprise is valuable even when it's not in the service of a magic moment happening. Surprise is valuable in all art forms. You know, you think about music. If you've seen the ads for Hans Zimmer, you know, him doing the soundtracks, his whole thing with music, and others as well talk about this, it's the idea of tension and release. You hit a note off the chord and your brain literally goes like, well, what's going on there? And then it resolves, okay? And so that's the play with magic and also just art forms in general, is this play between surprise and then also delivering on expectations, just like I was saying with genre. And that's what any new, like, interesting high concept movie does, right? Like Baby Driver it's a heist movie, but it's played to like these action soundtracks that the character's listening to in his ears. It's just like that little bit of intrigue. Inception was a heist movie, but in your brain. So for Derek to be doing a magic show, or perhaps something that is more than a magic show, for him to stop in the middle and say, hey, one of you who paid for a ticket, I need you to leave halfway through this, be willing to do that, and come back to another show. That is that curveball that you're not expecting. So by this point in the show, Derek has set a bit of a tone, and he's also invited the audience in a little bit to be co-creators and kind of create this more of a deeper feeling space than just a typical piece of entertainment or performance art. And at this point, he goes into what I think a normal or other magician would maybe do sooner in the show, which is he just shows his skill with cards, but even that is intentional. So he gets out a deck of cards and he talks about his start with sleight of hand, as I discussed, and how he was doing magic. And he even has a funny joke about like the headshot, you know, the classic headshot that magicians do, fanning a deck of cards. I mean, it took time to learn this, okay? So, you know, let us do it. I'm just kidding, I don't know. And so the cards are made more interesting by, yes, his technique, because he's very skilled with cards, and he shows throughout several kind of short routines how he is able to manipulate and control the cards, but it's also the story. It's his story. So now if you're tracing the structure of the show, he's given us a little bit, and then we give a little bit back with like the book. Then he gives us a little bit more. So we're diving into his backstory. His journey of cheating in the private games is also very intriguing, especially due to the risks and the personal risks involved. But I will say, despite all that, the card section is maybe the least interesting part of the show, because it probably looks like every other Magic show you've seen, where we just start to see several card tricks in succession. Again, they are crazy and way more amazing than anything I could do. I'm growing in my gambling sleight of hand skill, but he's got some chops. Derek is definitely like someone to look to and learn from when it comes to really good sleight of hand technique. But as a card lover, I have to admit that this is maybe what you would point at as the lull in the show, because if you put card tricks in succession, especially ones that are insularly card focused, where it's cards interacting with cards. Again, from the Joshua J studies, he talked about how that can kind of blend together and become forgettable in people's minds. They will just remember it as card tricks. The thing that helps, though, which Derek then plays upon in an amazing way, is the introduction of a separate prop. If you can just introduce a separate prop, it like changes everything somehow. And so I've thought about this with a lot of my Magic as well. How can I introduce just another prop into the mix? A pen, a dollar bill, a phone, whatever it might be. And so even though I love and I want to go back over the just kind of pure gambling sleight of hand that Derek represents, the part you're probably going to remember is the brick. So Derek, in kind of one of the peak vulnerability moments of his story, shares about an act of just hatred. Bullying is like a light term to call it, and just like a threat and fear and scare tactic that was used on him when someone threw a brick into his home window growing up. And he talks about how to anyone else, that's just a brick. But because of his story and what he shared about it, it changes, what you see and what you think about when you see that brick.
I don't need anyone to see all the things that make me what I am to know I'm more than just an elephant. I'm more than just one thing, because I'm not just defined by what you see.
There really is just going to be some noise out on the road today. I tried to wait it out, but yeah. And then he infuses his magic back into the moment, once again, introducing magic after we've gone to a valley in order to inspire this feeling of hope and wonder, and making beauty out of pain through what he does next. That's another thing he's been doing, is whenever he invites audience members, he's usually doing it with the name tags. So he'll invite a firefighter or whatever it may be. And again, that's breaking down those barriers, because that's a way we can identify with someone like, oh, that person's a firefighter. And so he invites them to think of, it's either one or two participants, think of a street in the area. And the corner of two streets, actually. So we kind of pinpoint this corner of two streets location, and then he gathers up all the cards he's been using and he covers the brick with those cards.
Only the people in this room know anything about that brick right now, and to everyone else on the planet, that's just a brick. Which it is. It's just all in how you look at it.
Makes the brick vanish. He knocks over the cards and the brick is completely gone. And then later people find that that brick is now at the corner of those two streets. And we get this kind of POV camera, social media footage of people finding the brick in that area. And again, it sells, this is the great thing, his magic is driving home the point of what he said. To anyone else, this is just a brick. But to him, it represents a piece of his story, a vulnerable piece of his story. And now the audience, they are in on the secret. They don't know how the trick was done, but they're in on the secret of what it means, what this brick means to his life. And this is that thing that is expanding the sense of compassion, empathy, vulnerability. And it makes you want to extend empathy to Derek. It also makes you want to extend empathy, compassion to others. Because what is that brick in someone else's life? Who's showing up to the office and their brick is just, how down they are that day. And to you, that's just whatever it is. We tend to view others so much in an out of context state. Like, this is just how you've showed up to me today. And yet, we're all coming in with a brick. So yeah, really powerful way to drive it home, both on the magical front, the psychological front, and in service to the goal, what I think is the goal of the show. But it gets better than that. Derek, once again, through the identity card system, invites audience members from various shows, we kind of see it intercut, to pick out from a stack of envelopes or letters, and then they take it out And he puts this so beautifully. He says, you're about to see something that we won't be able to see. It's just for you. You're going to see something literally appear on this piece of paper in front of you. But then he explains to the audience, you're about to see something, all of us are going to see something that you can't see, individual audience member. We're about to see your reaction to the paper. And that is such a beautiful line. I think it just communicates the sacredness of these different things, like the sacredness of the letter to this person for them, and also the sacredness of human connection. Like the fact that I can see your face when you're not seeing your own face. The fact that I can see someone else's face when they're not seeing their own. The fact that when I walk throughout the day, people are seeing my face and they're seeing my reaction, and that's something I can't see at literally every moment. Once again, it's fostering this human connection, and you see a supercut of all these people reacting to the magic. There's a magic moment. The words are appearing on the page, but then it's like actually a letter of someone who really loves them and who is, speaking some encouragement into them. There are tears. I remember shedding tears watching it on the airplane. And it's just this beautiful montage. So you see here, the structure is tracking because he's gone a little deeper with us. And now he's earned us going a little deeper with him, or the audience going deeper with him. If you switch the order of that, maybe you could pull it off. But it was very intentional. He's gone to some pretty deep moments in his life, and he's been vulnerable about them. And now he has fostered this space for vulnerability, compassion, and empathy with others. And this is why it inspires me and maybe even frustrates me sometimes, is because I kind of have my ways I could get around, or I have my ways I could make that magic moment happen, but I don't know if I would have ever thought to do it that way. And there's definitely some extra work. I won't reveal anything, but he's made it harder on himself by doing it in the way he did. There's definitely easier ways he could have done it, but it took the hard way to foster that space for compassion that he did. So, yeah, that's just something I think is pretty inspiring. And it all comes home to the final trick, which involves everyone in the entire audience, which I think when you think about that also really drives it home. We've had audience members kind of come up as surrogates for the whole audience. They've come up as representatives. So we get to see one person be vulnerable here, another vulnerable there. But now everyone is invited to stand up. He looks at all of them, and one by one, in kind of like a mentalism trick, a mental magic trick, he names the identity card that each person took. And it's a beautiful moment because now not only are you like, oh my gosh, he's going to name mine, but you're also hearing what everyone else chose for themselves. And there's such a mix of, highs and lows, funny ones, and even some that are really just heartbreaking. There's enough options for you to not pick certain ones, but one that I know everybody remembers, and I looked at YouTube comments of this scene, this part of the show. There's someone who says, I think the identity card title was Loser. I'm a loser. And it's the one out of all of them that Derek names for him because, that's the identity card he chose, but he kind of looks in disagreement. Not in a way that's putting him down, but of just a way where Derek looks genuinely heartbroken that someone chose this card. And he still names it for him because that's what they chose, but he expresses that he doesn't think that he has to call himself that. And what? That's so amazing for a magic show.
Nobody.
So he moves through all these different people and they all sit down. More tears are shed once again. There's moments of triumph. There's moments of feeling down, and everyone is named. And then he turns it back on himself and he names himself the Ruletista, bringing back that theming all back together. Once again, I've seen versions of that where it's oh yeah, I'm gonna, guess things in the audience. Cool, man. But he makes it about identity. And what is this identity you have chosen for yourself? And is that true, or does that match up? Or what are What are the painful things from your life that you are channeling into selecting that identity for yourself? So is it a magic show? I talked about this at the beginning. I think yes, it is a magic show, and it is one of the most, amazing magic shows ever, for just how it communicates theme and cultivates this sense of empathy, compassion, vulnerability. But is it only a magic show? I would definitely say no. It's certainly more than just a magic show. And so perhaps that's why Derek Delgaudio likes to say that it isn't a magic show, because if it's more than that, then he's trying to communicate it as something else. He would probably say like it contains magic. And that's definitely true. Like the same tricks from a different performer with a different script and structure would have hit different. They could have been silly, they could have been shallow, they could have been different. And that's another thing I want to say is like, we don't have to elevate every magic show to be like this. We need silly birthday kids shows. We need comedy magic shows. We need grand illusion shows. We need mentalist shows. We need these various forms of entertainment because they are entertainment. And so just in the same way that, The Sound of Music can be on a Broadway stage, but also, maybe a more comedic play can be, that level of flexibility is afforded to magic as well. But I think Derek has done a great service to magic by showing how it can be a medium for much more than only some of those things. And that is worth discussing because maybe some magicians would say that that weakens the magic of it. If you go on magic forums, places where magicians have conversations, there's a lot of theory around the fact and the idea that the magic comes first. If it's a magic show, don't dilute it in the sense that, people kind of criticize Marvel movies for this idea. Like, if you have this moment that you've earned where the team comes together or it's a heart-to-heart conversation, don't undercut it with a joke because you don't have the confidence to stick the landing. In the same way, is it worth letting magic speak for itself? And if it is, how do we protect that and not undercut it with humor or with some other form of entertainment medium that dilutes it? And so I do think that's worth exploring. The reason I think Derek pulls off the magic so well is that even though there could have been more magic moments infused, more rapidly, every magic trick in this show, I feel, for the most part, is like an exclamation point to the theme or the story or the communication, to the point where it would feel incomplete without those things. He takes us into these several valleys, and the magic brings us up out of the valleys. The magic is enough, along with the script, but the magic is enough to pull us up out of the valleys, and the magic communicates things without words, where in a different show that didn't have magic as a tool, as a communicative asset, it would have had to been said with words or art or, something else or a song. And that's what the diverse methods of art and communication offer us, is that Derek is able to make a brick mean so much more. He's able to make cards mean so much more. And he's able to make your ticket to entry at a show mean so much more. So to me, it is a masterpiece, both when it comes to a magic show and when it comes to just performance art in general. And it shows me and all of us who do stuff like this, even if it's just at an enjoyment level, that we can give people more than maybe even what is expected out of art, especially right now when it comes to AI and the conversations around it, and wherever you stand on it when it comes to art. As much as the sort of theory of death of the author has value, we still see the artist in the art. And death of the author, what I'm speaking to is the idea that we can separate art from the artist, so that, on the one hand, if your artist ends up becoming problematic, it can kind of redeem the art for you, that like, hey, in some way, this is mine now. It's not only theirs. And I've drawn things out of this that maybe are different than what they put in. But it's also still true that like, someone made this piece of art. And if that's true of the art you're looking at, it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference. And the difference that Derek here made was to inspire something that I think is the best thing you can inspire, this idea of looking at another person and seeing their personhood. And that's true of you too. You are a person, you have a story, and you have something you walk into work every day with that everyone else sees, and it's just a brick. But it is so much more. And so we need more art like this from human beings that cultivates eyes to look up at other people, and look them in the eye and see them for who they are, or at least try to. So keep living out your story, and know that I genuinely hope for the best when it comes to whatever bricks you've had thrown at you, and that some magic can be made out of them too. And if we do well in this whole life thing, maybe we inspire some whimsy and hope into others' stories as well. So yeah, let me know if these sort of deeper dive analysis videos are interesting to you, because I could talk about stuff like this all day, but it does take a bit more time. And so just want to know if it's interesting for you guys. Let me know. That would be genuinely helpful. If you watched all the way, thank you very much. You can check out magic merch. You can check out my membership if you like learning tricks, stuff like that. You can book me for a show if I'm in your area or on Zoom. But until next time, keep enjoying your magic if that's what you're into, or your hobbies in general if you're into something else. Stay a hobbyist at heart. That means drawing joy out of those things. Life is short. Yeah, I'll see you next time.